My dad didn't wait for my name to finish echoing. He stormed onto the stage, seized my wrist, and slapped me so hard the microphone caught it like a gunshot. At my own graduation, in front of everyone. "You don't deserve that degree," he hissed while my mom screamed, "You're just a failure in a gown." The crowd froze. My cheek burned, but my mind didn't. For the first time in my life, everything felt painfully sharply clear. They thought that moment would break me. They had no idea I'd already planned something worse, something they never saw coming. I used to think graduating would feel like stepping into sunlight after years of living in someone else's shadow. That morning, before everything shattered, I stood in my small apartment adjusting the crimson robe I'd borrowed from the university. The fabric felt heavier than it should have, like it carried every shift I'd worked, every late-night lab assignment I completed alone. Every time I'd forced myself to believe that hard work could make up for the love I never received. My name is Lisa Monroe, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the afterthought in my own family. Mom liked to say Evan was born special, the kind of child who deserved every opportunity, every praise, every sacrifice. And I was, well, something else. A helper, a shadow. A kid who learned early not to expect anyone to show up for school performances or science fairs. Even the day I was hospitalized with pneumonia, I stared at the door waiting for them to walk in. They never did, so I learned to walk myself home, to study without being asked how my day was, to clap for myself when no one else would. I don't think my family ever noticed how quietly I disappeared into the background. They were too busy cheering for Evan. He got a car at 16. He got a fully funded out-of-state education, even when his grades were barely holding together. And when he moved back home at 27 with no job, no plan, and no rent money, Mom called it supporting his potential. Meanwhile, I worked 2 campus jobs and tutored on weekends just to afford groceries. But I didn't complain. I kept my head down. I focused. I dreamed quietly. And somehow through that silence, I built a life they had nothing to do with. On graduation morning, I picked up the honor cord I'd earned through years of academic awards. The gold shimmered when sunlight hit it, and for a second, just 1 second, I let myself imagine Mom smiling at me with pride. I imagined Dad patting my shoulder. I imagined Evan joking that he always knew I'd make it. But the moment I approached them outside the stadium, reality snapped the fantasy clean in half. Mom barely looked at me. "That rope around your neck," she scoffed. "Is that really necessary? You're not trying to show off, are you?" Dad didn't even greet me before sighing. "Just keep things simple up there. Don't embarrass us. Embarrass them." The irony almost made me laugh. Students around us were hugging their families, crying, beaming, posing for pictures. And in the middle of all that joy, I stood with the people who had spent 23 years reminding me I wasn't worth celebrating. Still, I swallowed the ache. Today was bigger than them. At least I wanted it to be. But sometimes life waits until the exact moment you rise to reveal who's been trying to pull you down all along. The closer we got to the ceremony, the more the air around my family seemed to tighten. Dad walked a few steps ahead of us, hands shoved deep in his pockets, jaw set like he'd been dragged here against his will. Mom kept fussing with Evan's collar, swatting his hands away as he scrolled on his phone, barely acknowledging that this day had anything to do with me at all. When I tried to stand beside them for a photo, Evan didn't move an inch. "Lisa, seriously, not everything has to be some big moment," he muttered. Mom nodded, already annoyed. "Your brother just woke up, Lisa. Don't start." I stepped back, heat rising to my cheeks. Around us, families were taking pictures like these were treasures they'd frame forever. Moms wiping their eyes. Dads trying to hide how proud they were. One girl's little sister held a handmade sign with glitter letters spelling, "You did it." The kind of sign I used to make for myself when I was younger because no one else would. I reminded myself to breathe. Inside the stadium, I lined up with the other graduates, the honor cord warm against my neck. Ahead of me, a girl whispered excitedly into her phone about her parents arriving early just to save seats. Behind me, a guy kept turning to check if his dad had made it to the front row. Every tiny moment around me felt like a quiet reminder of what I never had. Dad's voice cut through my thoughts as he approached the barrier separating guests from graduates. "Lisa," he said sharply, beckoning me over with 2 fingers like I was a child being summoned. I stepped closer, heart tapping nervously against my ribs. He looked me over, eyes cold, evaluating. "Keep your speech short. Don't try to make it emotional. No bragging. This isn't about you." My breath caught. "Dad, it's valedictorian. I'm supposed to." He leaned in, dropping his voice low enough only I could hear. "You don't deserve that degree." The words sank like a stone into my chest. I stared at him, unsure if I'd misheard. But he didn't blink, didn't flinch. He just let the sentence hang there like a verdict he'd been waiting years to deliver. Something inside me went still. Behind him, Mom rolled her eyes at my frozen expression. "Oh, don't make that face! Just get through this, okay? And try not to draw attention." Draw attention. At my own graduation, as the valedictorian, I stepped back into the line, gripping the edges of my gown to steady myself. The stadium lights brightened, casting long shadows across the rows of chairs. The music swelled. Names began to echo through the loudspeakers as graduates stepped forward one by one. My palms were damp, my throat tight. But beneath the nervousness, something new flickered, sharp, metallic, undeniable. Not anger, not yet. Awareness. I'd spent my whole life excusing their cruelty, translating it into stress, disappointment, misunderstanding. But in that moment, hearing my own father tell me I didn't deserve the thing I fought hardest for, I saw it clearly. They weren't afraid I'd embarrass them. They were afraid I'd outgrow them. When my name was finally called, the stadium erupted in a wave of applause that didn't feel real. For a moment, I let myself believe the sound belonged to me, that I had earned every clap, every cheer, every hopeful face looking toward the stage. My heels clicked against the wooden steps as I climbed my speech, trembling slightly in my hand. I took my place behind the podium, the lights hot on my skin, my heartbeat loud but steady. And then, before I could draw my first breath, everything fractured. A sharp, slicing voice tore through the noise. My mother. "You're just a failure in a gown," she screamed, standing now, her finger pointed at me like I'd committed some public crime. A ripple of confusion spread across the crowd. I froze. Before I could register her expression, my father pushed through the aisle. His movements were fast, too fast, like anger was pulling him forward. He stormed up the steps, grabbed my arm hard enough to stop my breath, and slapped me across the face. The microphone caught it. The crack echoed across the entire field. For a second, no one moved. The air held its breath. My cheek burned, my ears rang, but my mind went eerily quiet. I tasted metal, maybe blood, maybe fear, or maybe it was something else, something colder. My father hissed, "I told you not to embarrass us." Embarrass them. My vision sharpened. The crowd blurred, but his face, his anger, came into razor focus. He wasn't ashamed of hitting me. He was ashamed people saw him do it. Security rushed forward, voices overlapping, hands reaching. "Sir, you need to step back, sir! Step away!" My mother shouted at them, insisting they didn't understand. Evan ducked his head like he hoped no one recognized him. My graduation ceremony dissolved into chaos because of the people who claimed to love me. As security guided them away, my professor hurried to my side. Lisa, can you hear me? Are you okay?" His worried eyes blurred a little, not because I was crying, but because some part of me was collapsing inward, folding into itself. But then, something inside me hardened. I straightened, ignoring the throbbing in my cheek. "I'm fine," I whispered, though the word didn't feel entirely true. Still, I finished walking across the stage, shaking the dean's hand with fingers that trembled only slightly. The audience cheered louder than before, louder than necessary. Maybe out of pity. Maybe out of outrage. Maybe because they'd just witnessed something unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. When the ceremony finally ended, I didn't go meet my classmates. I didn't search for anyone. I walked straight across the field past the tents and the families and the scattered programs on the grass and headed to the administration building. The hall inside was quiet, fluorescent lights humming faintly. When the woman at the financial window asked what I needed, my voice didn't waver. "I want a printed breakdown of every payment for my tuition," I said. "Every semester, every source." She hesitated, then nodded. Minutes later, I held the pages in my hands. Line after line confirmed what I already suspected. They had contributed nothing, not $1. And just like that, the collapse stopped feeling like an ending and started feeling like the beginning. I walked back to my apartment still in my gown, the honor cord brushing against my arm with every step, like a reminder of who I was and who they refused to see. When I closed the door behind me, the silence felt heavier than the applause had. I spread the financial printouts across my table: scholarship grants, research stipends, awards, summer program credits, tutoring income, even the bills I'd paid from working late in the university lab. The truth glared at me in black ink. Every achievement I had, I earned alone, and then something inside me clicked clean, final, inevitable. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the envelope my parents had given me last year. "Just sign these," Dad had said. "It'll make things easier for us when we retire." I'd thought stupidly it was the first time they trusted me with something important. Now I knew better. Inside were the documents appointing me as temporary proxy in emergencies. They never imagined I'd use it. They assumed I'd always stay small, grateful, obedient. They assumed wrong. The next morning, I sat across from a financial advisor in a small office overlooking downtown. My cheek was still bruised, but I didn't bother covering it. "You have legal authority to restructure the fund," he confirmed after reviewing the paperwork. "It's unusual, but it's valid." "I want it protected," I said. "Not liquidated for myself. Just moved somewhere they can't misuse it." He nodded slowly, as if studying me. "Most people come in angry." "You don't look angry." I considered that. "I'm not. I'm done." By noon, the paperwork was filed. The fund was placed into a trust with protections they couldn't bypass. I wasn't taking a cent. I was simply closing the door they kept slamming in my face. Hours later, the video of my father slapping me hit the internet. Valedictorian struck by parent on stage. The clip spread fast, first among students, then the local news, then people across the country who saw themselves in my stillness, my silence, my refusal to break, even when the world watched me shatter. Messages filled my inbox. Strangers sent support, shared their stories, asked if I was safe. I didn't respond to most, but one email made me stop. A tech investor from Seattle wrote, "Anyone who can hold composure under that kind of pressure has the resilience I want in my lab. Interested in joining my team." The offer was double what the university had given me. That night, I sat in my dark apartment, the only light coming from my laptop screen. My parents thought they'd humiliated me. Instead, they created the moment that changed everything. But I wasn't done. I returned to the university the next day. When the auditorium was empty, I walked back onto the stage. The podium still stood there, silent, waiting. It felt surreal being in the same place, but without the chaos, without their voices poisoning the air. I set up my phone hit record and faced the camera. My parents said I didn't deserve my degree. I began. "So let's talk about what I actually deserve." I laid out everything calm, factual, steady. The scholarships, the grants, the bills I'd paid alone, the proxy rights they signed, the trust now protecting their own retirement from their poor decisions. "I'm not destroying their future," I said softly. "I'm protecting mine." Then, as a symbol not of revenge, but of closure, I fed the old paperwork they gave me into a shredder. The sound was slow, deliberate, final. "They had no idea what I would do next," I said to the camera. "But I hope they learned something from what I did." I stopped recording. No dramatics, no yelling, just truth. The video hit 1 million views in 2 days. My parents didn't call at first. Then on day 3, Dad left a voicemail. "Lisa, send us the access code to the fund. We can't get in." No apology, no acknowledgement, no humanity. Mom texted hours later. "Stop being dramatic. Your father needs that password." I sent one photo back the shredder. The next week, I boarded a flight to Seattle to start my new job. I didn't tell them. I didn't owe them that. My new workplace was bright, modern, full of people who cared more about ideas than appearances. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. It didn't take long for them to find me. One afternoon, after a long strategy meeting, I walked into the lobby and froze. My mother stood there twisting her handbag. My father hovered beside her, older, somehow deflated. The receptionist gave me an apologetic look. She recognized them from the viral video. Mom stepped forward. "Lisa, sweetheart." We just want to talk. I kept walking until I stood a deliberate distance from them. Now you want to talk, I said. When there's no stage, no audience, no applause to drown out who you really are. My father cleared his throat. Your brother told us you exaggerated things online. Really? I said. Because the slap wasn't edited, the scream wasn't edited, and neither were your words. They flinched but said nothing. I handed them an envelope. Inside were copies of everything: payment records, scholarship notices, grant approvals, their proxy signatures, and documentation showing the trust was legally protected. Mom's hands trembled. Why are you doing this to us? I looked at her evenly. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm simply stopping what you did to me for years. Dad opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You taught me something important, even if you didn't mean to. You taught me that some people only love the version of you they can control. And once you grow past that version, they try to crush you back into it. Silence stretched between us. You can leave now, I said gently but firmly. There's nothing left to discuss. They left without another word. Their footsteps faded down the marble hallway until they were gone completely. I exhaled slowly, realizing this was the moment I'd been walking toward my whole life, not revenge, not triumph, but freedom. 3 months later, at a research conference in Chicago, I presented early detection models I'd spent years working on. Afterward, a dean approached me. I watched your story, she said, but your work speaks louder. Have you ever considered leading your own program? I felt that same clarity I'd felt on stage the day everything fell apart. Only this time, it didn't come from pain. It came from becoming who I was always meant to be. Chicago felt like a second beginning. The air was colder, cleaner, almost sharp against my lungs, like it was cutting away whatever still clung to me from the past. I settled into my new role, leading a small research team guiding students who reminded me of versions of myself that never had anyone to believe in them. For the first time, I woke up without bracing for someone's disappointment. Then, Evan reached out. A short message our parents had kicked him out blamed him for everything, claimed he'd made them look bad. He said he had nowhere to go. He asked if he could stay with me. I didn't reply. Instead, I mailed him a photo from graduation the moment of the slap frozen midair, a reminder of how cycles break. I framed that photo on my new office shelf not as a wound, but as proof that rising isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet decision to walk away and never look back. My parents still pretend none of it happened. Evan still waits for a reply. But I've learned that freedom isn't granted. It's claimed one boundary at a time. If this story touched something in you, tell me where you're listening from. And if you've ever had to fight your way out of a story someone else wrote for you, hit subscribe. You're not alone.